The Duino Elegies by Rainer Maria Rilke, translated by J.B. Leishman, as taken from Rainer Maria Rilke's Selected Works, Volume 2, Poetry. First Elegy. Who, if I cried, would hear me among the angelic orders? And even if one of them suddenly pressed me against his heart, I should fade in the strength of his stronger existence. For beauty's nothing but beginning of terror we're still able to bear. And why we adore it so is because it serenely disdains to destroy us. Every angel is terrible, and so I repress myself and swallow the call note of depth-dark sobbing. Alas, who is there we can make use of? Not angels, not men, and even the noticing beasts are aware that we don't feel very securely at home in this interpreted world. There remains perhaps some tree on a slope to be looked at day after day. There remains for us yesterday's walk, and the long-drawn loyalty of a habit that liked us and stayed and never gave notice. Oh, and there's night, when wind full of cosmic space feeds on our faces. For whom would she not remain, longed for, mild disenchantress, painfully there for the lonely heart to achieve? Is she lighter for lovers? Alas, with each other they only conceal their lot. Don't you know yet? Fling the emptiness out of your arms to broaden the spaces we breathe. Maybe that the birds will feel the extended air in more fervent flight. Yes, the springs had need of you. Many a star was waiting for you to perceive it. Many a wave would rise in the past towards you, or else perhaps, as you went by an open window, a violin would be utterly giving itself. All this was commission. But were you equal to it? Were you not still distraught by expectancy, as though all were announcing some beloved's approach? As if you could hope to house her, with all those great strange thoughts going in and out and often staying overnight. Should you be longing, though, sing the great lovers? The fame of all they can feel is far from immortal enough. Those, you envied them almost, those forsaken, you found so far beyond the requited in loving. Begin ever anew their never-attainable praise. Consider. The hero continues. Even his setting was a pretext for further existence, an ultimate birth. But lovers are taken back by exhausted nature into herself, as though such creative force could not be exerted twice. Does Gaspara Stampa mean enough to you yet? And that any girl whose beloved has slipped away might feel from that far intenser example of loving, could I but become like her? Should not these oldest sufferings be finally growing fruitfuler for us? Is it not time that, in loving, we freed ourselves from the loved one, and, quivering, endured, as the arrow endures the string, to become, in the gathering outleap, something more than itself? For staying is nowhere. Voices, voices, hearken, my heart, as only saints once hearkened. So that the giant call lifted them off the ground, they, though impossibles, went on kneeling and paid no heed, such was their hearkening. Not that you could bear God's voice by a long way, but hark to the suspiration, the uninterrupted news that grows out of silence, rustling towards you now from those youthfully dead. Whenever you entered a church in Rome or in Naples, were you not always being quietly addressed by their fate? Or else an inscription sublimely imposed itself on you, as, lately, the tablet in Santa Maria Formosa. What they require of me? That I should gently remove the appearance of suffered injustice that hinders a little, at times, their purely proceeding spirits. True, it is strange to inhabit the earth no longer, to use no longer customs scarcely acquired, not to interpret roses and other things that promise so much in terms of a human future, to be no longer all that one used to be in endlessly anxious hands, and to lay aside even one's proper name like a broken toy. Strange, not to go on wishing one's wishes. Strange, to see all that was once relation so loosely fluttering hither and thither in space. And it's hard, being dead, and full of retrieving before one begins to perceive a little eternity. All of the living, though, make the mistake of drawing too sharp distinctions. Angels, it's said, would be often unable to tell whether they moved among living or dead. The eternal torrent whirls all the ages through either realm forever, and sounds above their voices in both. They've finally no more need of us, the early departed, one's gently weaned from terrestrial things as one mildly outgrows the breasts of a mother. But we, that have need of such mighty secrets, we, for whom sorrow's so often source of blessedest progress, could we exist without them? Is the story in vain, how once, in the morning for Linos, venturing earliest music pierced barren numbness, and how, in the startled space, an almost deified youth, suddenly quitted forever, emptiness first, felt the vibration that now lifts us and comforts and helps? Second Elegy. Every angel is terrible. Still though, alas, I invoke you, almost deadly birds of the soul, knowing about you. Where are the days of Tobias, when one of the shining most stood on the simple threshold, a little disguised for the journey, no longer appalling, a youth to the youth as he curiously peered outside? Let the archangel perilous now from behind the stars step but a step down hitherwards, high upbeating, our heart would outbeat us. Who are you? Early successes, favorites of fond creation, ranges, summits, dawn-red ridges of all forth-bringing, pollen of blossoming godhead, junctures of light, corridors, stairways, thrones, chambers of essence, shields of felicity, tumults of stormily rapturous feeling, and suddenly separate, mirrors, drawing up again their own outstreamed beauty into their own faces. For we, when we feel, evaporate. Oh, we breathe ourselves out and away, from ember to ember yielding a fainter scent. True, someone may tell us, "You've got in my blood, the room, the springs growing full of you." What's the use? He cannot retain us, we vanish within and around him. And those that have beauty, oh, who shall hold them back? Appearance of something keeps getting up in their faces and going away. Like dew from the morning grass, what's ours exhales from us like the heat from a smoking dish. O smile, whither? O upward gaze, new, warm, vanishing wave of the heart. Alas, but we are all that. Does the cosmic space we dissolve into taste of us then? Do the angels really only catch up what is theirs, what has streamed from them, or at times, as though through an oversight, is a little of our essence in it as well? Is there just so much of us mixed with their features as that vague look in the faces of pregnant women, unmarked by them in the whirl of their coming back to themselves? How should they remark it? Lovers, indeed, if only they could, might utter strange things in the midnight air. For it seems that everything's trying to hide us. Look, the trees exist. The houses we live in still stand where they were. We only pass everything by like a transposition of air, and all combines to suppress us, partly, perhaps, as shame, and partly as inexpressible hope. Lovers, to you, each satisfied in the other, I turn with my question about us. You grasp yourselves. Have you proofs? Look, with me it may happen at times that my hands grow aware of each other, or else that my hard-worn face seeks refuge within them. That gives me a little sensation. But who, just for that, could presume to exist? You, though, that go on growing in the other's rapture, till, overwhelmed, he implores no more. You, that under each other's hands grow more abundant like vintage years, swooning at times just because the other has so expanded, I ask you about us. I know why you so blissfully touch, because the caress withholds, because it does not vanish, the place that you so tenderly cover, because you perceive thereunder pure duration, until your embraces almost promise eternity. Yet, when you've once withstood the startled first encounter, the window longing, and that first walk, just once, through the garden together, lovers, are you the same? When you lift yourselves up to each other's lips, drink unto drink, oh, how strangely the drinker eludes his part. On Attic stellae, did not the circumspection of human gesture amaze you? Were not love and farewell so lightly laid upon shoulders, they seemed to be made of other stuff than with us? Oh, think of the hands, how they rest without pressure, though power is there in the torsos. The wisdom of those self-masters was this: hitherto it's us, Ours is to touch one another like this, the gods may press more strongly upon us. But that is the gods' affair. If only we too could discover some pure, contained, narrow, human own little strip of corn land in between river and rock. For our own heart still transcends us even as theirs did, and we can no longer gaze after it now into pacifying image or godlike body, wherein it achieves a grander restraint. Third Elegy. One thing to sing the beloved, another, alas, that hidden guilty river god of the blood. Him she discerns from afar, her lover. What does he know of that lord of pleasure, who often, out of his lonely heart, before she'd soothed him, often as though she didn't exist, streaming from, oh, what unknowable depths, would uplift his godhead, uprousing the night to infinite uproar. Oh, the Neptune within our blood! Oh, his terrible trident! Oh, the gloomy blast of his breast from the twisted shell! Hark, how the night grows fluted and hollowed! You stars, is it not from you that the lover's delight in the loved one's face arises? Does not his intimate insight into her purest face come from the purest star? It wasn't you, alas. It wasn't his mother that bent his brows into such an expectant arch. Not to meet yours, girl, feeling him, not to meet yours did his lips begin to assume that more fruitful curve. Do you really suppose your gentle approach could have so convulsed him, you that wander like wind at dawn? You terrified his heart indeed, but more ancient terrors rushed into him in that instant of shattering touch. Call him. You can't quite call him away from sombre consorting. He certainly wants to, he does escape. Disburdenedly settles into your intimate heart, takes up and begins himself there. Did he ever begin himself, though? Mother, you made him small, it was you that began him, for you he was new, you arched over those new eyes the friendly world, averting the one that was strange. Where, oh where are the years when you barred the way for him, with your slender form, to the surging abyss? You hid so much from him then, made the nightly suspected room harmless, and out of your heart full of refuge mingled more human space with that night space of his. Not in the darkness, no, but within your far nearer presence you placed the light, and it shone as though out of friendship. Nowhere a creak you could not explain with a smile, as though you had long known when the floor would behave itself thus. And he listened to you and was soothed. So much it availed gently your rising. His tall cloaked destiny stepped behind the wardrobe then, and his restless future that easily got out of place conformed to the folds of the curtain. And he himself, as he lay there in such relief, dissolving under his drowsy eyelids, the sweetness of your light shaping into the sleep he had tasted, seemed to be under protection. Within, though, who could divert the floods of origin flowing within him? Alas, there was no caution within that sleeper, sleeping, yes, but dreaming, yes, but feverish. What he embarked on! He so new, so timorous! how he got tangled in ever-encroaching creepers of inner event, twisted to primitive patterns, to throttling growths, to bestial preying forms, how he gave himself up to it, loved his interior world, his interior jungle, that primal forest within, on whose mute overthrownness light green his heart stood, loved, left it, continued out through his own roots into violent beginning where his tiny birth was already outlived, descended lovingly into the older brood, the ravines where frightfulness lurked, still gorged with his fathers, and every terror knew him, winked, was as though it were waiting. Yes, horror smiled at him. Seldom did you, mother, smile so tenderly. How could he help loving what smiled at him? Long before you, he loved it, for even while you bore him, it was there, dissolved in the water that lightens the seed. Look, we don't love like flowers, with only a single season behind us. Immemorial sap mounts in our arms when we love. O maid, this that we've loved, within us, not one still to come, but all the innumerable fermentation. Not just a single child, but the fathers resting like mountain ruins within our depths, but the dry riverbed of former mothers, yes, and the whole of that soundless landscape under its cloudy or cloudless destiny. This got the start of you, maid. And you yourself, how can you tell? You have conjured up prehistoric time in your lover. What feelings whelmed up from beings gone by? What women hated you in him? What sinister men you roused in his youthful veins? Dead children were trying to reach you. Oh, gently, gently show him daily an honest, confident task done. Guide him close to the garden, give him preponderance over his nights. Withhold him. Fourth Elegy. O trees of life, what are your signs of winter? We are not at one. We've no instinctive knowledge like migratory birds. Outstripped and late, we force ourselves on winds and find no welcome from ponds where we alight. We comprehend flowering and fading simultaneously. And somewhere lions still roam, all unaware, while yet their splendor lasts, of any weakness. We, though, while we're intent upon one thing, can feel the cost and conquest of another. The next's our enemy. Aren't lovers always coming to precipices in each other? Lovers that looked for spaces, hunting home? Then, for the sudden sketchwork of a moment, a ground of constance painfully prepared to make us see it. For they're very clear with us, we that don't know our feeling's shape, but only that which forms it from outside. Who's not sat tense before his own heart's curtain? Up it would go, the scenery was parting, easy to understand. The well-known garden swaying a little, then appeared the dancer. Not him. Enough. However light he foots it, he's just disguised and turns into a bourgeois and passes through the kitchen to his dwelling. I will not have these half-filled masks. No, no, rather the doll. That's full. I'll force myself to bear the husk, the wire, and even that face of sheer appearance. Here, I'm in my seat. Even if the lights go out, even if I'm told, there's nothing more, even if grayish drafts of emptiness come drifting from the stage, even if of all my silent forebears none sits by me any longer, not a woman, not even the boy with the brown squinting eyes, I'll still remain, for one can always watch. Am I not right? You, to whom life would taste so bitter, Father, when you tasted mine, that turbid first infusion of my must, you kept on tasting as I kept on growing, and, still arrested by the aftertaste of such queer future, tried my clouded gaze. You, who so often, since you died, my Father, have been afraid within my inmost hope, surrendering realms of that serenity the dead are lords of, for my bit of fate. Am I not right? And you, am I not right, you that would love me for that small beginning of love, for you I always turned away from, because the space within your faces changed, even while I loved it, into cosmic space, where you no longer were. When I feel like it, to wait before the puppet stage, no, rather gaze so intently on it that at last a counterpoising angel has to come and play a part there, snatching up the husks. Angel and doll, then there's at last a play, then there unites what we continually part by our mere existence. Then at last emerges from our seasons here the cycle of the whole process. Over and above us, then there's the angel playing. Look, the dying. Surely they must suspect how full of pretext is all that we accomplish here, where nothing is what it really is. O hours of childhood, hours when behind the figures there was more than the mere past, and when what lay before us was not the future. True, we were growing, and sometimes made haste to be grown up, half for the sake of those who'd nothing left but their grown-upness. Yet, when alone, we entertained ourselves with everlastingness. There we would stand within the gap left between world and toy, upon a spot which, from the first beginning, had been established for a pure event. Who'll show a child just as it is? Who'll place it within its constellation with the measure of distance in its hand? Who'll make its death from grey bread that grows hard, or leave it there, within the round mouth like the seeded core of a nice apple? Minds of murderers can easily be fathomed. This, though, death, the whole of death, before life's start, to hold it so gently and so free from all resentment, transcends description. Fifth Elegy. But tell me, who are they, these travellers, even a little more fleeting than we ourselves, so urgently ever since childhood wrung by an, oh, for the sake of whom, never contented will, that keeps on wringing them, bending them, slinging them, swinging them, throwing them, and catching them back, as though from an oily, smoother air they come down on the threadbare carpet, thinned by their everlasting upspringing, this carpet forlornly lost in the cosmos, laid on like a plaster, as though the suburban sky had injured the earth there, and hardly there, upright, shown us the great initial letter of theirsness, Then even the strongest men are rolled up once more in sport by the ever-returning grasp, as once by Augustus the Strong a tin platter at table. Alas, and round this centre the rose of onlooking blooms and unblossoms, round this pestle, this pistil, caught by its own dust pollen and fertilized over again to a sham fruit of boredom, their own never realized, so thin-surfacedly gleaming, lightly sham-smiling boredom. There the withered wrinkled lifter, old now and only drumming, shrivelled up in his massive hide as though it had once contained two men, and one were already lying in the churchyard, and this one here had survived him, deaf and sometimes a little lost in his widowed skin. And the youngster, the man, like the son of a neck and a nun, so tautly and smartly filled with muscle and simpleness. O you, a pain that was still quite small, received as a plaything once in one of its long convalescences. You, that fall with the thud only fruits know, unripe, daily 100 times from the tree of mutually built-up motion, the tree that, swifter than water, has spring and summer and autumn in so many minutes, fall and rebound on the grave. Sometimes, in half-pauses, a tenderness tries to steal out over your face to your seldomly tender mother, but scatters over your body, whose surface quickly absorbs the timidly rippling, hardly attempted look. And again, that man is clapping his hands for the downward spring, and before a single pain has got within range of your ever-galloping heart comes the tingling in the soles of your feet, ahead of the spring that it springs from, chasing into your eyes a few physical tears. And still, all instinctive, that smile. Angel, oh, take it, pluck it, that small flowered herb of healing. Get a vase to preserve it. Set it among those joys not yet open to us. In a graceful urn, praise it with florally soaring inscription, Subricio saltat. Then you, my darling, mutely elided by all the most exquisite joys, perhaps your frills are happy on your behalf, or over your tight young breasts the green metallic silk feels itself endlessly spoilt and in need of nothing. You, time after time, upon all of the quivering scale pans of balance, freshly laid fruit of serenity, publicly shone among shoulders. Where, oh, where in the world is that place in my heart where they still were far from being able, still fell away from each other like mounting animals not yet ready for pairing, where weights are still heavy, and hoops still stagger away from their vainly twirling sticks? And then, in this wearisome nowhere, all of a sudden, the ineffable spot where the pure too little incomprehensibly changes, veering into that empty too much, where the many-digited sum solves into zero. Squares, oh square in Paris, infinite show-place, where the modiste Madame Lamour winds and binds the restless ways of the world, those endless ribbons to ever-new creations of bow, frill, flower, cockade, and fruit, all falsely colored, to deck the cheap winter hats of fate. Angel, suppose there's a place we know nothing about, and there, on some indescribable carpet, lovers showed all that here they're forever unable to manage. Their daring, lofty figures of heart-flight, their towers of pleasure, their ladders long since, where ground never was, just quiveringly propped by each other,
were able to manage it there, before the ringed onlookers there, countless unmurmuring dead, would not those then fling their last, there forever reserved, ever concealed, unknown to us, ever valid coins of happiness, down before the at last truthfully smiling pair, on the quietened carpet? Sixth Elegy. Fig tree, how long it's been full of meaning for me, the way you almost entirely omit to flower, and into the early resolute fruit uncelebratedly thrust your purest secret. Like the tube of a fountain, your bent bough drives the sap downwards and up, and it leaps from its sleep, scarce waking, into the joy of its sweetest achievement. Look, like Jupiter into the swan. We, though, we linger, alas, we glory in flowering. Already revealed, we reach the retarded core of our ultimate fruit. In few, the pressure of action rises so strongly that already they're stationed and glowing in fullness of heart, when, seductive as evening air, the temptation to flower, touching the youth of their mouths, touching their eyelids, appears. Only in heroes, perhaps, and those marked for early removal, those in whom gardening deaths differently twisted the veins. Those go plunging ahead, preceding their own victorious smile, as the team of horse in the mildly moulded reliefs of Karnak, the conquering king. Yes, the heroes strangely akin to the youthfully dead. Duration doesn't concern him. His rising's existence. Time and again he takes himself off and enters the changed constellation, his changeless perils assumed. There few could find him, but fate, grim concealer of us, enraptured all of a sudden, sings him into the storm of his upsurging world. None do I hear like him. There suddenly rushes through me, borne by the streaming air, his dark echoing tone. And then how gladly I'd hide from the longing. Oh, would that I were a boy, and might come to it yet, and be sitting, propped upon arms still to be, and reading of Samson, how his mother at first bore nothing, and afterwards all. Was he not hero already in you, O mother, and had not even in you his lordly choosing begun? Thousands were brewing in the womb and trying to be him, but look, he seized and discarded, chose and was able to do. And if ever he shattered columns, that was the time when he burst out of the world of your body into the narrower world, where he went on choosing and doing. O mothers of heroes, sources of ravaging rivers, gorges wherein, from high on the heart's edge weeping, maids have already plunged, victims to be for the sun. For whenever the hero stormed through the halts of love, each heart beating for him could only lift him beyond it. Turning away, he'd stand at the end of the smiles, another. Seventh Elegy. Not wooing, no longer shall wooing, voice that's outgrown it, be now the form of your cry. Though you cried as pure as the bird when the surging season uplifts him, almost forgetting he's merely a fretful creature, and not just a single heart, it's tossing to brightness, to intimate azure. No less than he, you, too, would be wooing some silent companion to feel you as yet unseen, some mate in whom a reply was slowly awakening and warming itself as she listened. Your own emboldened feelings, glowing fellow feeling. Oh, and spring would understand. Not a nook would fail to re-echo annunciation. Re-echoing first the tiny questioning pipe a purely affirmative day quietly invests all round with magnifying stillness. Then the long flight of steps, the call steps, up to the dreamt-of temple of what's to come. Then the trill, that fountain grasped as it rises by falling, in promiseful play for another thrusting jet. And before it, the summer. Not only all those summer dawns, not only the way they turn into day and stream with beginning, not only the days, so gentle round flowers, and above, around the configured trees, so mighty and strong, not only the fervor of these unfolded forces, not only the walks, not only the evening meadows, not only, after late thunder, the breathing clearness, not only evenings, sleep coming and something surmised, no, but the nights as well, the lofty, the summer nights, but the stars as well, the stars of the earth. Oh, to be dead at last and endlessly know them, all the stars, for how to forget them? Look, I've been calling the lover, but not only she would come. Out of unwithholding graves girls would come and gather, for how could I limit the call I had called? The sunken are always seeking earth again. You children, I'd say, a single thing comprehended here's as good as 1,000. Don't think destinies more than what's packed into childhood. How often you'd overtake the beloved, panting from blissful pursuit of nothing but distance. Being here's glorious. Even you knew it, you girls who went without, as it seemed, sank under. You in the vilest streets of cities, festering or open for refuse. For to each was granted an hour, perhaps not quite so much as an hour, some span that could scarcely be measured by measures of time in between two whiles, when she really possessed an existence. All veins full of existence. But we so lightly forget what our laughing neighbor neither confirms nor envies. We want to be visibly able to show it, whereas the most visible joy can only reveal itself to us when we've transformed it within. Nowhere, beloved, can world exist but within. Life passes in transformation, and ever-diminishing outwardness dwindles. Where once was a permanent house, up starts some invented structure across our vision, as fully at home among concepts as though it still stood in a brain. Spacious garners of power are formed by the time spirit, formless as that tense urge he's extracting from everything else. Temples he knows no longer. We are now more secretly saving such lavish expenses of heart. Nay, even where one survives, one single thing once prayed or tended or knelt to, it's reaching, just as it is, into the unseen world. Many perceive it no more, but neglect the advantage of building it grandlier now, with pillars and statues, within. Each torpid turn of the world has such disinherited children, those to whom former has ceased, next not yet come to belong. For even the next is far for mankind, though this shall not confuse us, shall rather confirm us in keeping still recognizable form. This stood once upon mankind, stood in the midst of fate the extinguisher, stood in the midst of not knowing whither, as though it existed, and bowed stars from established heavens towards it. Angel, I'll show it to you as well. There, in your gaze it shall stand redeemed at last, in a final uprightness. Pillars, pylons, the sphinx, all the striving thrust, greyly from fading or foreign town of the spire. Was it not miracle? Angel, gaze, for it's we, O mightiness, tell them that we were capable of it. My breath's too short for this celebration. So, after all, we have not failed to make use of the spaces, these generous spaces, these our spaces. How terribly big they must be, when, with thousands of years of our feeling, they're not overcrowded. But a tower was great, was it not? O angel, it was, though, even compared with you. Chartres was great, and music towered still higher and passed beyond us. Why, even a girl in love, alone at her window at night, did she not reach to your knee? Don't think that I'm wooing. Angel, even if I were, you'd never come. For my call is always full of outgoing. Against such a powerful current you cannot advance. Like an outstretched arm is my call, and its hand, for some grasping, skywardly opened, remains before you, as opened so wide but for warding and warning, inapprehensible. Eighth Elegy. With all its eyes the creature world beholds the open, but our eyes, as though reversed, encircle it on every side, like traps set round its unobstructed path to freedom. What is outside, we know from the brute's face alone. For while a child's quite small, we take it and turn it round and force it to look backwards at conformation, not that openness, so deep within the brute's face, free from death. We alone see that. The free animal has its decease perpetually behind it and God in front, and when it moves within eternity like running springs. We've never, no, not for a single day, pure space before us, such as that which flowers endlessly open into. Always world, and never nowhere without no. That pure, superintended element one breathes, endlessly knows, and never craves. A child sometimes gets quietly lost there, to be always jogged back again. Or someone dies, and is it. For nearing death, one perceives death no longer, and stares ahead, perhaps with large brute gaze. Lovers, were not the other present, always blocking the view? Draw near to it and wonder. Behind the other, as though through oversight, the things revealed. But no one gets beyond the other, and so world returns once more. Always facing creation, we perceive there only a mirroring of the free and open, dimmed by our breath. Or that a dumb brute's calmly raising its head to look us through and through. For this is destiny, being opposite and nothing else, and always opposite. Did consciousness such as we have exist in the sure animal that moves towards us upon a different course, the brute would drag us round in its wake. But its own being for it is infinite, inapprehensible, unintrospective, pure, like its outgazing. Where we see future, it sees everything, itself in everything, forever healed. And yet, within the wakefully warm beast there lies the weight and care of a great sadness, for that which often overwhelms us clings to him as well, a kind of memory that what one's pressing after now was once nearer and truer and attached to us with infinite tenderness. Here all is distance, there it was breath. Compared with that first home, the second seems ambiguous and fickle. O bliss of tiny creatures that remain forever in the womb that brought them forth! Joy of the gnat that can still leap within, even on its wedding day, for womb is all. Look at the half-assurance of the bird, through origin almost aware of both, like one of those Etruscan souls, escaped from a dead man enclosed within a space on which his resting figure forms a lid. And how dismayed is any womb-born thing that has to fly! As though it were afraid of its own self, it zigzags through the air like crack through a cup, the way a bat's track runs rendingly through the evening's porcelain. And we, spectators always, everywhere, looking at, never out of everything. It fills us, we arrange it, it collapses, we rearrange it, and collapse ourselves. Who's turned us round like this, so that we always do what we may, retain the attitude of someone who's departing? Just as he, on the last hill that shows him all his valley for the last time, will turn and stop and linger, we live our lives forever taking leave. Ninth Elegy. Why, when the span of life might be fleeted away as laurel, a little darker than all the surrounding green, with tiny waves on the border of every leaf, like the smile of a wind, oh, why have to be human? And, shunning destiny, long for destiny. Not because happiness really exists, that precipitate profit of imminent loss. Not out of curiosity, not just to practice the heart that could still be there in laurel, but because being here is much, and because all this that's here so fleeting seems to require us and strangely concerns us. Us, the most fleeting of all. Just once, everything, only for once. Once and no more. And we too, once, and never again. But this having been once, though only once, having been once on earth, can it ever be cancelled? And so we keep pressing on and trying to perform it, trying to contain it within our simple hands, in the more and more crowded gaze, in the speechless heart, trying to become it, to give it to whom? We'd rather hold on to it all forever. But into the other relation, what, alas, do we carry across? Not the beholding we've here slowly acquired, and no here occurrence. Not one. Sufferings, then, above all, the hardness of life, the long experience of love, in fact, purely untellable things. But later, under the stars, what use? the more deeply untellable stars? Yet the wanderer too doesn't bring from mountain to valley a handful of earth, of for all untellable earth, but only a word he has won, pure, the yellow and blue gentian. Are we, perhaps, here just for saying house, bridge, fountain, gate, jug, fruit tree, window, possibly pillar, tower? But for saying, remember, oh, for such saying as never the things themselves hoped so intensely to be. Is not the secret purpose of this sly earth in urging a pair of lovers just to make everything leap with ecstasy in them? Threshold. What does it mean to a pair of lovers that they should be wearing their own worn threshold a little, they too, after the many before the many to come, as a matter of course? Here is the time for the tellable, here is its home. Speak and proclaim. More than ever things we can live with are falling away, for that which is oustingly taking their place is an imageless act under crusts, that will readily split as soon as the doing within outgrows them and takes a new outline. Between the hammers lives on our heart, as between the teeth the tongue, which, in spite of all, still continues to praise. Praise this world to the angel, not the untellable. You can't impress him with the splendor you've felt. In the cosmos where he more feelingly feels, you're only a novice. So show him some simple thing, refashioned by age after age, till it lives in our hands and eyes as a part of ourselves. Tell him things. He'll stand more astonished, as you did beside the roper in Rome or the potter in Egypt. Show him how happy a thing can be, how guileless and ours, how even the moaning of grief purely determines on form, serves as a thing or dies into a thing, to escape to a bliss beyond the fiddle. These things that live on departure understand when you praise them. Fleeting, they look for rescue through something in us, the most fleeting of all. Want us to change them entirely, within our invisible hearts, into, oh, endlessly, into ourselves, whosoever we are. Earth, is it not just this that you want? To arise invisibly in us? Is not your dream to be one day invisible? Earth, invisible? What is your urgent command, if not transformation? Earth, you darling, I will. Oh, believe me, you need no more of your springtimes to win me over. A single one, one, is already more than my blood can endure. Beyond all names, I am yours, and have been for ages. You were always right, and your holiest inspiration is death, that friendly death. Look, I am living. On what? Neither childhood nor future are growing less. Supernumerous existence wells up in my heart. Tenth Elegy. Some day, emerging at last out of this fell insight, may I lift up jubilant praise to assenting angels. May not one of the clear-struck keys of the heart fail to respond through alighting on slack or doubtful or rending strings. May a brighter radiance stream from my streaming face. May inconspicuous weeping flower. How dear you will be to me then, you nights of affliction! Why did I not, inconsolable sisters, more kneelingly welcome you, more loosenedly render myself to your loosened hair? We wasters of sorrows! How we stare away into sad endurance beyond them, trying to foresee their end, whereas they are nothing else than our winter foliage, our sombre evergreen, one of the seasons of our interior year. Not only season, they're also place, settlement, camp, soil, dwelling. Strange though, alas, are the streets of the city of pain, where in the pseudo-silence of drowned commotion loudly swaggers the casting cast from vacuity's mould, the begilded adieu, the bursting memorial. How an angel would trample it down beyond trace, their market of comfort, with the church alongside, bought ready for use, as clean and disenchanted and shut as the post on a Sunday. Outside, though, there's always the billowing edge of the fair, swings of freedom, divers and jugglers of zeal, and the figured shooting range of bedizened happiness, targets tumbling in tinny contortions whenever some better shot happens to hit one. Cheer struck, on he goes reeling after his luck. For booths that can please the most curious tastes are drumming and bawling, especially worth seeing, for adults only, the breeding of money. Anatomy made amusing, money's organs on view, nothing concealed, instructive, and guaranteed to increase fertility. Oh, but then just outside, behind the last hoarding, plastered with placards for Deathless, that bitter beer that tastes quite sweet to its drinkers so long as they chew with it plenty of fresh distractions. Just at the back of the hoardings, just behind them, it's real. Children are playing, and lovers holding each other. Aside, gravely in pitiful grass, and dogs are following nature. The youth is drawn further on. Perhaps he's in love with a youthful lament. He emerges behind her into the meadows. She says, "A long way. We live out there." "Where?" And the youth follows. He's touched by her manner, her shoulder, her neck. Perhaps she comes of a famous stock? But he leaves her, turns back, looks round, nods. What's the use? She's just a lament. Only the youthfully dead, in their first condition of timeless serenity, that of being weaned, follow her lovingly. Girls she awaits and befriends. Gently she shows them what she is wearing, pearls of pain, and the fine-spun veils of endurance. Youths she walks with in silence. But there, where they live, in the valley, one of the elder laments takes to the youth when he questions her. "We were once," she says, "a great family, we Lamentations. Our fathers worked the mines in that mountain range. Among men you'll find a lump, now and then, of polished original pain, or of drossy, petrified rage from some old volcano. Yes, that came from there. We used to be rich." And lightly she leads him on through the spacious landscape of lamentation, shows him the temple columns, the ruins of towers from which, long ago, lords of the house of lament wisely governed the land. Shows him the tall tear trees, shows him the fields of flowering sadness, only as tender foliage known to the living. Shows him the pasturing herds of grief, and at times a startled bird.
flying straight through their field of vision, scrawls the far-stretching screed of its lonely cry. At evening she leads him on to the graves of the longest-lived of the house of lament, the Sibyls and Warners. But, night approaching, they move more gently, and soon, moon-like, emerges the all-guarding sepulchral stone, twin brother to that on the Nile, the lofty Sphinx, the taciturn chamber's gaze. And they start at the regal head that has silently poised forever the human face on the scale of the stars. His sight, still dizzy with early death, can't take it in, but her gaze frightens an owl from behind the pshent, and the bird, brushing in slow down-skimming along the cheek the one with the ripest curve, faintly inscribes on the new death-born hearing, as though on the double page of an opened book, the indescribable outline. And higher, the stars, new ones, stars of the land of pain. Slowly she names them. There, look, the rider, the staff, and that fuller constellation they call fruit garland. Then further toward the pole, cradle, way, the burning book, doll, window. But up in the southern sky, pure as within the palm of a consecrated hand, the clearly resplendent M, standing for mothers. But the dead must go on, and in silence the elder lament brings him as far as the gorge where it gleams in the moonlight, there the source of joy. With awe she names it, says, among men it's a carrying stream. They stand at the foot of the range, and there she embraces him, weeping. Lone he ascends to the mountains of primal pain, and never once does his step sound from the soundless fate. And yet, were they waking a symbol within us, the endlessly dead, look, they'd be pointing perhaps to the catkins hanging from empty hazels, or else to the rain downfalling on dark soil bed in early spring. And we, who think of ascending happiness, then would feel the emotion that almost startles when happiness falls. End Duino Elegies by Rainer Maria Rilke. Translation by J.B. Leishman.